I'll show you a picture. If you can see this picture belongs to Susanta Khan. Last year in November, I think October, November, I was in a meeting where I had to stay in a hotel which was close to Shahrukh Khan's house. Somebody at the hotel told that Shahrukh Khan's house is just very close. So I thought I would walk. So somebody took me, we walked. So like my house, I thought, his house will be there, and he and his son Aryan and Sohana and Gauri and all of them will be going and coming. So I thought it would be very easy. But as we walked, two of us walked, we saw the huge house. We saw a huge house, and what I was thinking was so wrong. And looking at the house and the guard, I began to say, how poor is this family? How poor is Susanta Khan? If we do not have Christ, if anyone has not accepted Christ, he or she is simply are poor. So gospel poverty is a very important topic. Scripture tells us in Proverbs chapter 3 verse 27 and 28, do not withhold good from those to whom it is due, when it is in your power to act. Do not say to your neighbor, neighbor means the person with whom you are studying or working or somebody whom you are meeting, neighbor, come back tomorrow, I will give it to you, when you already have it with you. Gospel is something that we have. We cannot tell someone to go back and tomorrow we will give. Gospel poverty is all about not having the gospel in our lives. Now, when you talk about poverty, starvation, pain, suffering, the word poverty has four connotations. One is called absolute poverty. The other one is called relative poverty. Another is called situational poverty. And another is called generational poverty. Generational poverty. And how true this is also when we talk about the gospel. Absolute poverty is when people lack the basic necessity of survival. Standing in front of Shahrukh Khan's house, I was thinking, I was so sad about his son, about his daughter. Daughter and son studied in London. So posh, plenty of money. But the basic necessity of knowing God is not there. Number two is called the relative poverty. When the people are worse than the others. Spiritually speaking, we'll talk about it a little later. But these are the people. I'm thinking about Akash Ambani. I'm thinking about the scientist's son. I'm thinking about the president's children. Some of them are below the standards of knowing things. Situational poverty, when people's life and livelihood suddenly vanishes due to natural calamity. Something happened in the family. Think about Sushant Singh Rajput. Avinash used that one. Suddenly. But then, what bothers me the most is is called the generational poverty. Forefathers were without the gospel. Parents are without the gospel. They are the gospel. So for generation past to generation present, they remain in poverty. Now, I'm talking about general things, but I used it for gospel purpose. When people think about poverty, they think about food, shelter, and clothing. But when God looks at poverty, He looks at spiritual poverty, mental poverty, and eternal poverty. Let's dig the issue. Before we do that, I want to share with you a young politician, his story. I am an educated politician of a successful party. For generations past, we are a family of politicians. However, I earned leadership role at this young age. I worked hard for it. One evening, I was invited to a Christmas event as chief guest. It was at this event, and for the first time, someone touched my heart by telling me that I need the truth in my life. Ever since, I have become a seeker of that truth. Think about the poverty in this person's life. But let me not go any further without telling God's clean sheet or clean check that He has given us. What is His promise? I will forgive them if they turn to me. I will turn their sorrows into joy. Poverty may be in whatever state, how deep it is. God says, if they come to me, I will forgive them and turn their sorrows into joy. Three things I said: spiritual, mental, and eternal. Now, there are three thoughts I want to quickly let you know. God is a spirit, John chapter 4. And therefore, we, the human being, are created with a spirit. My spirit is wearing a dress called my body. As we change our dress, we change our body, but the spirit stays the same. Now, our spirit longs to have that spirit that has created our spirit. Same thing with Suhana Khan. Number two, human beings are created in the image of God. We all know that. Genesis chapter 1, verse 27. Image. What is that image? God is a spirit, and He has imaged us so that we have been created in His image. Now, Job 32:6 says, every person is a spirit being. So whether Aryan Khan or Ashish Ambani or somebody who is studying with you and somebody who is working with you, every human being, we are born as a spirit being. Now, as a spirit being, there is an inbuilt inner quest. They may not talk to you like that. You stand with them, you have tea with them, you talk to them about the topics, or you are friendly with them, but there is an inner quest that they struggle with. What is this inner quest? The inner quest is for the absolute reality. Especially people whom we call the GenNEXT, people who are from the elite family. They, since they are educated, they know what they believe is just because of the forefathers or the family religion they have to. It's a kind of bondage. So there is an absolute reality they search for. They also search for the creation. They look at the creation and say, why this creation? What is the purpose? And therefore, personally, they look for meaning and purpose to their life. And look at this man. His name is Anand. He says, my father is a big-time entrepreneur. After finishing my MBA, first class, I inherited some business. At my early age, I was very successful. I received many national recognition. But suddenly, this recognition created in me an arrogance. And that arrogance led me to feel an inner vacuum. Inner vacuum. At night, to fill up that inner vacuum, I began to drink and go to night parties. One night when I came back, I fell down at the gate. And our security people lifted me up and led me to my room. And this is how my life went on. I used to come back at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock. After some times, the same thing happened. I fell down. The security picked me up. And as the security was taking me to my room, very softly he told me, sir, do you know whose son you are? I was very angry, he said. Angry with him. But that night, I was in my sense. I was not heavily drunk. I couldn't sleep. I began to think. What is happening with me? I began to understand my inner void. And this inner void began to hound me. I stopped thinking heavily, thinking that this inner void will be met. Nothing doing. Nothing happened to me. I don't know where to go. Inner void or spiritual void is simply something called a person in two places. The real self and the present lifestyle. So the people that we are addressing about are the people who have this inner spiritual void. And some of them think that they are at the end of the road. They're in end of the road and so they feel there is depression, confusion, what Avinash was talking about, brain fog, and then stress, nothing making any sense. Socializing is becoming very difficult, lacking inspiration, and they begin to ask this question, who am I? Why am I here? Mind you, they are not telling you openly, loudly to you, but this is what they're in their heart. What is my destiny in life? Look at this man. This man is another. He said, I studied in a prestigious university. After my school final, my father, rich, thickly rich, bought me a sports car, which I desired very much. So when I entered into my college, I was a hero. I was a celebrity. But in my lifestyle, I found out that I had no real friend. I had no real friend. And that emptiness, that I have no real friend, began to create a lot of panic in me. I bought lots of latest gadgets. I did everything possible under the sun. I began to smoke. I began to drink. I began to do many things I often cried out at the rooftop of my house. Are there anyone who would listen to me? Alas, my life would be different. I wanted to make my life different. But how? How can I make my life different? Number 2, mental poverty. Bible talks about the conscious mind, subconscious mind, unconscious mind. Conscious mind, what we do, enters into our subconscious mind. And in the subconscious mind, in our unconscious mind, that is reflected. The mind and the body connection, what is said in Romans chapter 12, verse 1 and 2, is a very important biological functioning. And therefore, because the mind, I'm struggling with poverty of my mind, and therefore the positivity is gone, the negativity has invaded me. Romans chapter 1 verse 28 talks about, furthermore, just as they did not think it worth while to retain the knowledge of God. So God gave them over to a depraved mind that they do what ought not to be done. God gave them up. What a bad thing. Scripture has so many verses. 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 27. It says, disciplining about body. 2 Corinthians chapter 13, 5, 6, and 7 talks about the same thing, mind. 2 Timothy 3, 8, Titus 1, 16, Hebrews chapter 6, verse 8. He said, because of a mind, I think that my life is filled with thorns and thistles. I'm happy. I have money. I have all the pleasures. But deep down, there is something pinching me. And Mark chapter 7, verse 21 to 23 talks about, for it is from within, out of a person's heart comes out evil thoughts. It comes from the heart, then it is programmed, processed in the mind. And then when it is processed in mind, then we put it into action. This is such an important issue. In this verse, it talks about evil thoughts. Comes from out of the heart. You see, the heart is pierced. All right? And so there is an evil thought, there is an evil action, and that evil action makes a person evil. Now, she may be Shahrukh Khan's daughter. She may be Mukesh Ambani's son. He may be Mukesh Ambani's son or daughter. He may be anybody. According to the scripture, the person is evil because he or she without the gospel. This man says, I'm a scientist. I have been influential in finding several crystal rock discoveries. But of late, I find it difficult to think properly. When I begin to think about some issues, all kinds of wrong thoughts invades my mind. I'm doing my yoga, my meditation to re-establish my concentration. But why am I not succeeding? Why am I not succeeding? Bible says in 2 Corinthians 4:4, God of this age has blinded our minds. God of this age has blinded the minds of the GenNEXT that we are talking about today. This lady, the third thing we talk about, eternal poverty. We as Christians, we know Ecclesiastes chapter 3 verse 11 says, He, means God, has also put eternity, set eternity in our hearts. So eternity is not something new, because naturally God has set in our hearts. So this lady says, I'm conscious about things that are eternal, but I do not understand, I do not have a concept of eternity or eternal. So there is a war within me, says a young entrepreneur. Says there's something that is the fight going on within me about things that are eternal. Look at these two doctors. They are good friends from childhood, and they all completed their masters in gynecology. They also got a job in the same hospital, although their work timing was different. And they said they have delivered hundreds of babies. But they said, whenever we deliver a baby, a new baby comes in, we begin to ask something that is very important. We get amazed because we see something eternal in this baby. Something eternal. He said, as a doctor, we don't believe in rebirth, reincarnation. These are all philosophies. We don't believe in that. We together read a lot of books, gone through lots of internet to find out what is eternal, what is permanent, what is it? How can we discover? How do we find what life is? The story was told about this young couple. They said, this is a real story. I have been requesting myself. I've been questioning myself. For the last 13 years, I'm reading books, checking website, discussing with my friends on the destiny of my life. They said, look, today I'm okay. What about my tomorrow? I said, it is bothering me. And my wife saw that there is something going on in my mind. She came to me and I asked her, do you know anything about our destiny in life? And she laughed at me. She said, wow, you've become a philosopher. Stop philosophizing your life. She said, look, this is our time to live, our time to enjoy. She pleaded with me to forget about it. But how can I forget, he says. I'm pondering, what do I find? How do I find? Where do I find the destiny of my life? Let me tell you, the young generation from elite and affluent family are in the wrong road. And scripture makes it very clear. The condition is that they are living in sin. Gospel poverty has to do with living in sin. They are spiritually and morally going through problems. There is a huge vacuum that we as Christians cannot see. What is that vacuum? They're spiritually blind. They're mentally depraved. They're entangled to their self. Me, mine. Me, mine. Me, mine. And in that weak movement, all the evil spirit, demonic spirits capture them and put them into bondage. So what is gospel poverty? Quickly, sin, world, self, and Satan. That is gospel property. And as in Romans, Paul says, I do not understand what I do. For what I want to do, I do not do. But what I hate to do, I do. Scripture also tells us, oh, wretched. There are some people, when we give them the gospel, what happens? There is a conviction of sins come in, and they begin to say, how wretched I am. Who will set me free from this body of death? What is the message for all those who are living in poverty of the gospel? Is forgiveness. This girl said, I am honestly ashamed of myself. With my utter frustration, I was wanting to commit suicide to get rid of my sinful guilt. That day, my male friend told me to meet with him. I met him. We discussed various things, and at last, I insisted him for an illicit sex. He was reluctant, but I forced him because I wanted peace. I wanted to get rid of my guilt. I felt so horrible when I left. I was already wounded, but over and above, bigger wounds came into my life. Now, this nasty guilt feeling is all the more killing me, especially when I am alone at home. How do I get rid of the guilt? This man said, it's a good news, let me tell you. He's a businessman, thickly rich. One of his staff came and pleaded with him, invited him to come to his house for a birthday party. Both husband and wife went to the birthday party. And the man said, the welcome, the honor, the hospitality they showed to me, I saw something supernatural in this family. Supernatural love in this family. We were so poor. I was feeling so bad in front of them. I was like naked. I was like a starving man, poor man. My money somehow disappeared. I was thinking how poor, both me and my wife. We could not sleep that night. I had more questions than answers. His life continues to attract me. When I stand before my staff, I feel ashamed. I'm troubled. One day, he says, I'm going to ask him, surely, what made them so different than us? Let me tell you, India needs you. It is now or never. This is the Kairos movement. And in this Kairos movement, we have to be vocal. We have to be visual. We have to be vital. We have to speak, be vocal. We have to show our love, like this family. We have to be vital because doors are closing. We may not have lots of opportunity. Let's remember, this young generation, that the age that Avinash said, very soon are going to be adult. And the teenagers are coming. They are also living in generational spiritual starvation. And Bible says, Lamentation 4:4, the children, which means teen, beg for bread, and there is no one to break. It is urgent. It is urgent. One who is wise saves life. If you save life, you are wise, Scripture says. Don't be carried away because everything is going wrong. There is so much of wickedness. Let not your love for God disappear or become cold. Now the question is, how do we eradicate gospel poverty.